All right. Another thing I want to talk about, there is this revival going on, and we're going to um react to it. It's happening at the Asbury Seminary. There's a revival. It started out as one of their chapels, and they broke out into worship, and they just felt led to continue to worship. And I'm going to play this interview and then kind of share some of the things that I'm actually surprised about.
A spiritual movement is what many say is happening at Asbury University right now.
The event has been going nonstop since last Wednesday. WKYT's Chad Hedrick is live on Asbury's campus tonight. And Chad, I understand they've opened up even some overflow spaces there.
Yeah, Bill and Amber, at one point, 2 chapels here on campus had to be used for overflow spaces because Hughes Auditorium
2 chapels, fam. 2.
here behind me was so full, and they were playing a live stream of what was going on inside. Thousands of people have come from all over the country to be here for this movement and see what's happening here in Wilmore. For students at Asbury University, what's happening this week on their campus, they can only describe as an act of God.
The last several days have kind of blurred together. The passing of time is no longer a thing.
A service led by students that started on Wednesday, still going strong.
I think that's pretty dope that it's student led. I think that's pretty dope.
The following Monday, and no signs of ending.
Just our usual service and praying and singing, and then it just didn't stop.
People are driving and even flying in from all over to witness and take part in this movement. Mississippi, Texas, New York, and even California.
A lot of people have asked me if it was manufactured or set up, and I would just say, I don't think you can manufacture freedom. I don't think that you can manufacture joy.
For the second,
I don't think you can manufacture freedom. I don't think you can manufacture joy. Preach, sis. Preach.
night in a row, the main auditorium was so full, overflow spaces had to be created, but many choosing to stand outside the doors and listen.
Everybody wants to be in a community, and everybody wants to be wanting the same thing. So, I mean, it's crazy on the one hand, but it also makes total sense.
As for when the service might end, some students say it won't ever be over, just take on new life and meaning.
It will slow down, and I think when it slows down, I think there's going to be a huge commissioning, and I think it's going to be this is great, and this has been a crazy awesome week, but the spirit that's here is within believers, and so when they go out, it's not going to shrink. It's going to keep going and going and going.
And you can tell behind me, the crowd is certainly
I think that's dope that she pointed out that it is going to slow down. It's not going to be something that's going to continue on forever, but that when it does slow down, that the hope from the revival, that's what we want to call it, the revival that's taking place, is that the people there be commissioned, be sent out, and go and share the hope and the good news of Jesus. I think that's pretty dope.
thinned out some from what it was earlier this evening, just packed here on campus of people wanting to get in.
And the fact that this is on the news is kind of dope too, because sometimes things that happen in churches don't really make the news unless it's, or even in just Christian circles, don't really make the news unless it's something bad or juicy for clicks and likes and views.
But you can still hear them singing and praying inside the auditorium, so likely going to continue into that 7th day. Allison herself says she spent about 100 hours this week already here in the auditorium. Live in Wilmore, Chad Hedrick, WKYT.
That is dope, might I say. One of the things that surprised me about that is that the service in and of itself didn't seem overly charismatic. Yeah, you did see some hands lifted up, but it wasn't people running up and down the aisles. It didn't see a lot of people jumping down. It just seemed like people there kind of just taking in the moment, and worshiping, each person worshiping God in their own way. When I say worshiping God, I mean God of the Bible, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, the triune God, in their own way. And what I mean by this, whether they were sitting, whether they had their hands raised, whether they were singing along. I did see some other clips of this, and yeah, that seemed to be a very consistent thing. I saw that sometimes the people would all sit down and somebody would come and speak, but it didn't seem to be a overly charismatic. Another thing that surprised me, it wasn't there was it was very diverse in age. It does seem like a little bit older crowd, but there's also young people there, old people. But another thing that surprised me is the people there, they're not extremely flashy, or they're not preachers in sneakers. They're not the most have like the most swag or the most charisma. It just seems like, yo, this kind of happened and just overflowed from a very genuine time of worship, which I think is pretty dope. I think is pretty dope. Yeah, so I think that's exciting just to hear about revival. And I think even like my experience in church, like revival is something that is often talked about and something that we desire to experience, but to actually hear like testimonies and see revival taking place is exciting. And I think that's something that we should all desire to happen in our local churches. I don't think that's something that we need to necessarily travel across the country to be a part of, but I do think that revival is something that we should expect and something that we should pray for and hope for to happen within our own local church body. So when we're watching these things as believers, I think this should be something that encourages us. I don't think we should try to copycat it. I don't think we should try to mimic it, but I just think it should just stir hope and faith in our heart to expect God to move in a mighty way in our local churches, in our congregations, in our time of prayer and meeting and fellowshipping with one another, that at any moment we meet, God can show up in his Holy Spirit and just have his way and manifest his presence and break chains and bring freedom to the situation. And like obviously like God moves in various ways. And I think sometimes the thing that we try to do as believers is we try to put God and the Holy Spirit in this box and say you can only move this way. You can only work within these confines. And obviously, look, that's not the case. That's not the case. God is doing something. He's moving in what seems to be a very powerful way at Asbury Seminary. So yeah, just I just find this extremely encouraging, and I hope and I pray that God continues to move there.